So I'm going to be preparing these pieces of flaming box elder for a tabletop epoxy finish. And I'll be sanding everything up to 320 grit, and I'll round over all of the edges. That way when you pour the tabletop epoxy, it'll all flow over the edges nice and even, and you'll have a smooth finish with no dimpling. And then here I'm filling in some of the deeper cracks, and I'll let it dry, and then I'll sand back over it with 320 grit. So here I'm applying a thin seal coat of epoxy with a brush. And after that, I'm going to take some 320 grit the following day and scuff it up and get it nice and smooth. And the reason for doing this is if you don't do a seal coat before you do a flood coat, you probably won't get a completely flat, glossy finish without any dimpling in it. So do this method and you'll have a perfect flood coat with no dimples or any imperfections. Then I'm using a gator finishing tack cloth to clean up any of the dust particles before I apply the flood coat. And then for the flood coat, I'm going to brush the epoxy onto all the edges and faces first, giving it a thin layer before I pour the actual flood coat, and then I'll use a notched trowel to spread it around nice and even. After this step, I like to let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then I'll come back with a torch and I'll pop any little air bubbles that it has. And checking up on it the following day, everything looks perfectly flat and no dimples, so turned out just as I hoped it would. So that is pretty much it for this video. I hope this was helpful to some of you, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.